Well, hello again, dear friends. I hope everyone is well. As you can see from all these things that I have set out here, I've got a lot to share with you. And last week, let me move this for a minute. Oops. You remember that we just did some play. We took fabric and I showed you how you can just organically sew little sections of fabric together over time and space, and it just kind of ends up being, whatever it is. And I was surprised to just see a little house in my bunny with the sky. I don't even know how that happened. Still, life and art are surprising, aren't they? So we're going to come back to this, but I wanted to show and share how we're going to bring stitch back to this particular piece. Before I do that, I haven't been working too much on this one, but I do want to show you. Remember how I stitched around all these little petals and it just didn't seem like enough, and actually up close it doesn't look too exciting. But I went back in and did some pink. I needed like just a different color in there, and so I like how it looks a little bit better. The stitching isn't, well, I guess over here it's a little bit more consistent and looks a little bit more like the petal. But this is kind of like my, not formal. This is more of like a draft, we'll call it, just kind of play and exploration. What I do like is what I did over here then. We might get to some of this surface stitching, which I'm actually a big fan of. It's not embroidery, but it's just kind of adding texture and, well, really adding texture, but different kind of interesting features of specific ones. And so I really like how I use the seed stitch here to just kind of draw that out, and I think it just makes the sunflower kind of pop out a little bit more. So we may get to the seed stitch in a little bit, but we're going to be working with seams today, so that will be for another time. That's just kind of a little bit of an update. So what are we doing today? Well, I'm going to show you a couple of different things that have inspired me. And the first one being this book by Valerie Bothell. And I haven't used it a lot, and I'm surprised at that, but I think it's just because I don't do a lot of quilting. And so I either have some purposeful projects where I'm actually making like a dress or something for a baby or a scarf, or I'm just embroidering, or a million other projects at hand. So I haven't really had an opportunity to really delve into this. But as I was planning on what we should do this month and how to play, I wanted to share several different types of stitches that you can add in addition to the simple running stitch, which we've been focusing on. Should have bookmarked. But I love this idea of embellishing the seams, and she shares so many different ideas, just like pages and pages of them, and very complicated little sections. And the idea is just kind of to do a little section every day and add to it and play. And it's so playful. It just fits so beautifully this month. And then I also have this book, which I also, it's new and shiny. And if I have a chance, I have her newest book here. This is Tilly Rose, and this is called Stitch Memories. And there's some projects in here, but I was really gravitating towards this slow stitch piece, and just, she suggests several different stitches that go beyond the running stitch to use, and different types, Katha stitching. I've come back to that. White work, that might be something we'll do one month. But I just really love this idea of different stitches along the seams or inside to add some texture and dimension and just interesting pieces. So what does that look like for here? Well, I was going to share, and I'll probably zoom in a little bit, how I'm going to select some stitches that I want to teach you, and it might be familiar to you or it might be something a little bit different, but I'm going to begin to take some little sections here and just work through them and add some surface stitching around the seams or right along the seams. So we've done a lot with just slow stitching a running stitch inside of these little sections, and I might still do that. I really like that idea for the texture of this, what seems kind of like the ground. But I want to do a few other things in this seam. So I'm going to cut away in just a little bit and we'll get started so I can zoom in and you can kind of see the stitches that I'm going to use. All right, so here we are. I just wanted to show you, I also put like a quilting batting on the back because I do want this to eventually be a mug rug, and it needs that little bit of thickness to make it insulate against the heat onto furniture. So I have selected this green thread. It comes from this little spool right here, and I am going to have some fly stitches along this seam right here and possibly along this one. And so I'm going to show you how to do the fly stitch. It's a stitch that, and I'm going to love my thread, as Natalie Channon suggests from the classes I've taken with her, and I've already knotted. So I'm going to come from the back. So this is a stitch that is fairly new to me, and what it's going to require us to do is come up on the left side, go down on the right side, but pivot our needle to come up to the seam. And then what's going to happen is it's going to have a bunch of little Y's that go all the way down here. So it could be like a vine. I may add to it. If I really wanted to make sure that my stitches were, perfectly spaced, I could put some little dots with that friction pin all along there. But I'm trying to stick and stay true to the organic nature of this process. So it might not look perfect. And I'm also just going to be open with how it looks. So this is kind of a longish thread. I made it just a little bit too long. So the trick here, or one of the important parts, is to, when you come up and then whenever you put your needle in and you come back up towards this, oh, there we go. You're going to want to make sure that the thread is under that needle, because when it passes through, I knew that was going to happen. Pens and I don't always get along. So we're going to do that, and see, it makes this kind of little loop, and then we just go back down as far as we want. There's no pen over there to snag me now. So it makes this lovely little Y. So then we can come back up. Again, it's not going to be perfect, and a little bit, the batting is kind of scratchy in the back. And then I'll just get going. I have something I want to read to you as well, but I wanted to show you up close how that goes. So again, through the seam. And then, at first, just like learning anything new, might take a lot of thought, and it's not necessarily that rhythmic, meditative stitch of running stitch. I'm going to put it down here a little bit. But it is pretty fun, and it does go pretty quick. And then you have such a really neat little effect. So I'm going to kind of come down here, and it'll reposition. And I'm just going to keep going with that. And I have a thought for today, because, why on the seams? I like to add meaning to lots of things. And I think that the Stitched Memories book is all steeped into that as well. I was reading a poem that's called "And the End." And, just kind of bringing back either life's purpose or how to just continue to enjoy life. Thinking about, being whole, and each of these little seams here are kind of like breaking pieces. I think Ben reflect back to the last couple of years, and there have been some breaking moments. And so the poem goes, in the end, you realize that the most beautiful parts of your life sprout out from your brokenness, just like these seams. Seems like it's not whole, but here we are. And then the cracks are where the art blooms. Don't you love that? Think about that, how, as we get into spring, and I'm excited about planting, I also know that those weeds are out there. They're already wanting to pop up through the cracks in our brick or in lots of other places. And they want to grow and thrive too. But that's true of life. Where there are cracks, sometimes beautiful things come out. And the curves are where the view is majestic. Love that idea. The shivering land is where the dance of life happens. You have to have patience with that. Those pens. In the end, you realize that being wholesome is about not resisting your breaking and unbecoming, but making space for manifesting, unearthing, and taking it all in. Having some time to work through this practice of just slow stitching, putting some pieces together, and then just looking at what you've created with new eyes and thinking, what else can I add? She writes, in the end, you realize the most beautiful parts of your life sprout out from your brokenness, and nothing that is linear created any beauty, except a linear theme with beautiful stitching on there. So I hope you see and you like that and you try the fly stitch. After I got going, even though it's fairly new to me, I found it pretty easy and quick, and I really love how that's coming out. And I'm going to do the other side as well. And the second day for this week, we'll just kind of stitch, and I'll have maybe some other thoughts to share about the beauty of making art and how this space can give us some quiet time to reflect and work through issues that we've had, think about what we've learned from them, and how we can just move forward, because that's really all we can do. Move forward, find the little joys where they present themselves. Sometimes we have to work really hard to find them. Sometimes they come easily. So that's where we'll end for today. And I'll pick back up on Friday. Have a great week.